Patient wants what he wants, so I just need to shut up and give it to him. Okay. Patient comes into my pharmacy. I'm here for my COVID test appointment. BTW, please stop coming into our store without a mask if you think you may have COVID. We have a drive-through. I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. We only do the tests on Tuesdays and Thursdays because of our lab delivery system. No, I signed up for the test. Proceeds to show me forms for the antibody test. I explained to him that this isn't a COVID test, it's for antibodies, and it won't tell him if he at that present moment has the virus. He tells me he needs a negative result for his son's soccer camp, so we need to just do it. Manager steps in and reminds him this isn't the same thing. Patient starts getting mad and interrupts manager to say, "Look, you don't know what they do and don't require for my son's camp, so just give me the dang test I paid for." Okay. We do the test. While waiting for the results, patient walks around the store, and my manager calls the soccer camp registration manager, his friend, and confirms with him the antibody test won't work. No information about the patient was talked about, only the question of which test works for registration. Camp check-in is in an hour. Patient comes back, we let him see his results, ring him up, give him his receipt. We do this for a signature for record keeping. Receipt was no charge because he paid online. Then manager proceeds to tell him about conversation with soccer manager. Patient is pissed and yelling he wants a refund and we tricked him. Manager, no sir, I tried to explain the difference to you and you told us to give you what you paid for, so we did. Your lack of understanding is not our fault and we are not responsible to pay for that. I fucking love my job, but a big shout out to my manager who has zero patience for Karens. ETA, since so many of you clearly are not familiar with HIPAA, calling someone and saying, "Does your camp accept antibody tests instead of COVID tests?" is not a violation. Please stop pretending it is like you understand HIPAA. Now to the comments. Love the HIPAA comment too. I love when people not in healthcare think they understand what it means. It's HIPAA. Thank you for catching that. Don't you love it when customers know more than you do? They're experts, of course. OP replied, "The customer is always right, you know." LOL, except when they're patients. My favorite was when a fellow tech told someone in the drive-thru, "Mom, this is not McDonald's and these are not fries." How I do not miss retail pharmacy. Except for the stories. I would have gone through the process and not brought up that you'd had the conversation with the camp. I would have highlighted in marker pen the antibody test and said as I gave the results form, "Here is the antibody test you paid for." Then let the patient go back to camp with form in hand to be told it was the wrong one. If his son is with him, he might get the fall off from the ensuing tantrum, though unfortunately. OP replied, "Son was indeed with him and was very concerned when we were trying to explain he would need something else." Love your edit regarding HIPAA. The information exchanged was the information every one of us would get if we called and asked if it was antibody test or COVID test that was needed. It's also what would be listed publicly on a FAQ page. OP replied, "If I get one more TH at a hyperviolet ion, I'm gonna scream, upside down face." My favorite is when they threaten to call HIPAA. Okay. Don't tell me what to do. Why did you do what I wanted? A short journey. The much anticipated sequel to I Knew What I Was Doing Last Summer and Why Did You Let Me Do That? I'm a nurse and a few years ago a patient came in and insisted that the problem was with their splenial column. We tried for a long time to explain to this person that the splenial column isn't a thing. They stormed off and wrote a letter of complaint and asked to see me, my shift leader and the manager together. Imagine my joy when it was pointed out again and again that the splenial column didn't exist and they still got charged for their appointment that they walked out on, especially when they shouted at us that we should go to school and learn anatomy properly. OP replied, "I hate people, woman facepalming." Also, yet another case of unpreparedness on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part. OP replied, My boss said that once and I'll never forget it. ETA, since so many of you clearly are not familiar with HIPAA, calling someone and saying does your camp accept antibody tests instead of COVID tests, is not a violation. Please stop pretending it is like you understand HIPAA. They're confused with the more popular HIPAA version. I think there's a bit of cross-cognition going on here between HIPAA and Hippo, teasing the high PPA bot. It's HIPAA. Being stupid is expensive. OP replied, in this case it cost his poor son his soccer cam. Well, and the cost of the unneeded test. And the time to take it. Which granted, here is probably. But stupid people do this shit all the time it adds up. The only thing I would have done differently is not tell him again at the end that the test is the wrong one. He already made his bed. I don't work at a pharmacy, but I saw something similar. I was there to get a prescription. I was behind another man in line, and I hadn't spoken to any of the pharmacy techs to tell them I was there. However, all the pharmacy techs know me by name. The man says he is there for the second vaccine, then says he doesn't have an appointment. Now the pharmacy does vaccinate walk-ins, but it is based on availability. So, if they have appointments that will use up their stock, they can't accept walk-ins. The pharmacy tech told him they may have one extra dose today, but he would need to come back in 2 hours to see, or call in to ask. The guy absolutely loses his mind, and starts talking about how he drove half an hour to get here. They can't turn him away. Well, the Walmart that is literally a 2-minute walk also does vaccines. There are 4 other pharmacies along this main street, and I can pretty much guarantee he probably passed a bunch of pharmacies on his way here if he actually did drive for half an hour. In other words, tough luck, that's your fault. He wasn't listening or leaving, so another pharmacy tech came over, scanned my prescription that was ready, and loudly called my name. He moved out of the line so I could grab my prescription. The pharmacy tech then calls for the next person, essentially meaning he can't get back in line to keep witching. This is a textbook example of the entire phrase, the customer is always right in matters of taste. Your story should go in the Wikipedia entry. It's always lovely to see the full phrase, instead of the co-opted the customer is always right bullshit. I previously worked in the casino industry. We gave a lot of room on the customer is always right until they were wrong, and then they were very wrong. Armchair morons thinking they know HIPAA. I don't, and I don't go around acting like I do. A lack of understanding on your part does not constitute a crisis on my part. OP replied, love this saying. As someone that used to work at a hotel, let me hit you with your new favorite quote. I'm sorry, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on our part. Flashbacks to my mother. She used to use that line on me, even when it was her poor planning. Once I was old enough to use it, she decided that phrase was disrespectful and I was punished for saying it back to her. So you're saying you've been disrespecting me for the past 12 years with that exact line? Who taught you to raise kids? Kudos to your boss for being on your side. Sounds like you got a good one. OP replied, he's freaking amazing. I had a patient yelling at me the other day because their doc hadn't sent in their refill yet, and he stepped in and told her to quit yelling at his staff or he'd find another pharmacy for her to go to. Very anti-Karen. This post triggered me. I work at a busy urgent care place in NYC. I miss the days when people would show appreciation for healthcare workers. Now, our volumes are climbing back up due to this godforsaken Delta variant, and I have to deal with Karens every day complaining about long wait time. It's not our fault this pandemic happened, and it's not our fault we are constantly short-staffed. This is an upper management issue, not mine. There's literally nothing I can do. Yet despite that I'm yelled at, gotten things thrown at me, and verbally harassed every time I go to work. It's sad. The pandemic has taught me patience for some reason. Maybe because I'm home all the time. Anyway, I got in line for vaccine and people can't even sit and wait their turn. Are you in a hurry to go home and stay home again? It was a weekend and for sure they didn't have anywhere else to go. So impatient and always wants to go ahead of everyone even in cases like this pandemic. Good grief. They are in a hurry because to them the vaccine means freedom. No masks. No social distancing. No clue that you can still get infected while vaccinated.